year 2024 in the United Corporations of America. I hope everybody's having a decent day in these trying times. I am a little tired, a little out of it. The dog woke me up at 3 in the morning, and I am didn't get back to bed. And I've been dealing with a child and some other things all day. So bear with me, but it could be worse. I do have water, and I'm not being bombed by Israel. So no complaints relative to that. It is my birthday tomorrow, so I am doing a radical thing and taking a day off tomorrow. I was complaining to my wife because I keep trying to take a day off, and I end up working. So tomorrow I'm actually not going to turn my computer on. So Colin, figure it out, content-wise, because I'm not working tomorrow. But a lot going on. Obviously, there is a weird, wacky story about the North Carolina Republican governor candidate and being on child porn sites, I believe. I'm not really going to get into that, but that's probably the least shocking thing. There's also something I want to get into if there's time. We spend about $1 trillion a year on, quote, national security threats around the world. Which aren't actual national security threats. But I'd like you to know that the greatest national security threat we all face is actually your water. There is water problems all over this country to a staggering degree, and the media is not talking about it. Isn't that shocking? I have updates for you Status Coup OGers. I have updates on the West Virginia water crisis. We were down in coal country earlier this year, covering the coal water, the coal mine contaminated water that was leaking out into hundreds of residents' water. There was green fungus in water. We have an update on that. There's lead and Legionnaires in Chicago, in New York City, in Los Angeles, and a couple other hotspots, and you might not know about it. Might actually want to know about it if you live in one of those areas. So we're going to try to get into that if I could keep up the stamina, because, again, I didn't sleep last night. But first, and smash that like button, share this live stream so we can get it out to as many people as possible. First, big news as far as, well, obviously there's been big news in Lebanon this week. We went over that yesterday, where Israel, I don't think there's any other way of describing it other than committed multiple terrorist attacks with pagers and walkie-talkies, killing, at this point, it seems like a few dozen, and injuring thousands of people to go after Hezbollah, according to Israel. And Hezbollah is now responding. But this morning, Uncommitted, the Uncommitted movement, which is the movement that started out of Michigan. It is Palestinian American, Arab American led. They, in Michigan, got over 100,000 Michiganders to vote uncommitted during the primary, and then it spread throughout other primary states. They have come out saying they will not endorse Kamala Harris, but still want you to vote against Donald Trump. Yeah, we'll have to make sense of that. I'll have a guest joining me in just a minute, but let me just read to you the details here. This from The Intercept. Kamala Harris refused to meet with Uncommitted about Gaza, and Uncommitted refused to endorse her. The movement counts among its ranks many disillusioned Arab and Muslim voters in the key swing state of Michigan. The Uncommitted movement announced Thursday that it would not endorse Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic candidate for president. Vice President Harris's unwillingness to shift on unconditional weapons policy, or even to make a clear campaign statement in support of upholding existing U.S. and international human rights law, has made it impossible for us to endorse her, Uncommitted said in a statement released alongside a Thursday morning press release. The group said at the press conference that the move came after Harris refused to meet with Uncommitted. Uncommitted delegates gave Harris until September 16th to meet with them in the crucial swing state of Michigan. The deadline passed earlier this week. Uncommitted leaders and other observers were initially optimistic that Harris's nomination would lead to a policy shift towards Israel and Gaza, even if they were sober about Harris's strong pro-Israel record. As Harris cemented Democratic support behind her nomination, her campaign picked up its efforts to conduct outreach to Arab and American voters. Let me get to this part. Hold on. Uncommitted said that while the group would not endorse Harris, it continues to oppose a Donald Trump presidency and is not recommending a third party vote in the presidential election for fear that it would inadvertently boost Trump's advantage in the Electoral College. The group urged uncommitted voters to cast anti Trump votes up and down the ballot. Quote, for months, we have urged Vice President Harris to shift her Gaza policy so we could mobilize voters in key states to save lives and our democracy. The group said in the Thursday morning statement, the DNC and the vice president's campaign fumbled even a small gesture to unite our party ahead of November by rejecting the simple request for a Palestinian American speaker. And another detail, this is on from Akela Lacey, the Intercept reporter. More news from this AM's presser. Uncommitted says Harris's campaign sent a letter on Sunday, the deadline that Uncommitted had given for a meeting, saying there was nothing they could do to respond to their request at the moment. So that's a kind way of telling them to fuck off, if you ask me. And I'll just read this because I thought it was pretty accurate. This is from Representative Roman. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. She is the Georgia state representative that Uncommitted had proposed her as a speaker at the DNC, among a few others, and even were willing for the DNC to vet her speech. Still, the DNC and Harris, because ultimately Harris's campaign had the final say, she tweeted, "This is an incredibly generous statement," referring to Uncommitted, "and it's a travesty that the Harris campaign still couldn't meet these basic asks. Uncommitted turned out over 100,000 voters in Michigan and almost 1 million around the country. Meeting these asks wouldn't even be a risk." And another tweet I saw, Uncommitted set a ridiculously low bar for endorsing Kamala, literally just asking her to meet with Palestinian Americans in Michigan. And she still declined to meet it. So let's bring on one of those Arab Americans in Michigan. I interviewed this fine gentleman in Dearborn when I was there recently. He is a writer, an author, Abdel Abdelrahman. Please tell me if I mispronounced.
It's okay. It's a hard name.
Yeah. But you're in Dearborn. We spoke when I was there a couple of weeks ago. You obviously can't speak for everybody, but you know, you have your feet on the ear on the ground there. You know people in the Uncommitted movement. You also know people who are now in the abandoned. It was abandoned Biden. It's now abandoned Harris. First, let me say, you know, I don't want to be the white dude telling Arab Americans what to do. So it's not really for me to say whether it's good or bad that they chose not to endorse Harris, but still told people to vote against Trump. But I do think it's fair to say it sounds like a mixed message to me that on one end you're saying we're not going to endorse Harris, but it also sent out the message not to vote third party and to vote against Trump. Well, if you're not going to vote third party and you're going to vote against Trump, that would naturally mean vote for Harris, would it not?
Well, maybe not necessarily vote for Harris, but I will say that the kind of decision to come out and say don't vote third party was a bit surprising. Actually, this past week in Dearborn, the Arab Anti-American Discrimination Conference held a really big convention in Dearborn in which they brought out third party candidates, Jill Stein, who, according to the Council on American Islamic Relations, is actually polling 40% with Arab American Muslims here in Michigan. They also brought out Cornel West to also speak at this convention and also kind of poses two viable alternatives to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. I do think it's a very strange comment, at least in my respective opinion. The Democrats, particularly Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, have repeatedly slapped us in the face. They have shown that there's no room whatsoever for Palestinians or the Palestinian cause within the alleged Big Tent Democratic Party. And I guess, again, I can't speak for the Uncommitted movement. The only thing I will say is that in my conversations with individuals and part of the Uncommitted movement, or who are also at least sympathetic to the cause, is that I think there is a fear that if Donald Trump does win, that the kind of growing pro-Palestine infrastructure within the Democratic Party that's not part of the Democratic elite, that's not part of Kamala Harris, will kind of evaporate, and then possibly that they go back to square one in terms of the pro-Palestine movement, in terms of trying to garner sympathy. I will say, as an Arab American, or should I say, as a Palestinian American living here in Dearborn, I would have really have liked to seen the Uncommitted movement come out and be very vindictive and say, vote for whoever you want. The Democrats are the practitioners of this genocide against the people in Gaza. And by jettisoning unfettered arms shipments to Israel, not only are they displacing and killing and maiming Palestinians in mass, they're also opening up a second front in Lebanon right now with that large scale terror attack using Hezbollah as a quote unquote justification for killing and maiming civilians. Um, no longer should we be behooving to the Democratic Party. I think that they have to prove to us that they care, that they are sympathetic to our needs and want to address those needs. I also think that it's a bit silly that we're fearing the prospects of a Donald Trump presidency. I think even if none of this was happening, the prospects of Donald Trump presidency were already really real. Um, I'm going to refer to that second poll again here, Jordan. According to the Council on American Islamic Relations. Here in Michigan, Donald Trump was actually polling at 18%. That's ahead of Kamala Harris, who's polling at 12%. Of course, Jill Stein's at 40. There's already a big disillusionment with Arab Americans, with Muslims towards the Democrats. And I think we have a right to come out and vote against them, even if Trump is not the guy, which he shouldn't be. We as a community should have the right to vote third party. I think it's troubling messaging by the Uncommitted movement. I would actually even urge them to alter that message and say, vote for whoever they want for, because we need to break with the Democratic Party. They've insulted us. They don't care about us. They don't even see Palestinians or Arabs as human beings.
Right. And by the way, I did reach out to Layla from the Uncommitted movement, who I've interviewed before. We just couldn't make it work today, but I do think we'll be able to interview her. See, the thing that and I don't even ask this like condescendingly, I just don't know because I can't get in the mind. I was in Dearborn, but obviously I'm not Palestinian American, so I don't feel the trauma, and I don't know what you're going through. But something that I don't really understand is they believe through Uncommitted's message and statement today that the war and the killing would get a lot worse under Donald Trump. And I just wonder about that thinking because, I mean, the only thing really worse that I could think of is Donald Trump allows Israel to just drop a nuke or something on Gaza. But other than that, I don't really know how much worse can it get. Is he going to, technically they've paused the 2,000-pound bomb, so maybe he could unpause that. Maybe he would, provide more money. I mean, what is that thinking that it could get worse? Because to me, I don't really know how much worse it could get than what's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very kind of vague statement, honestly. I think if you look at Donald Trump's platform on Israel, on Palestine, and compare it to Kamala Harris, there's really no daylight whatsoever. I guess the only difference I could say is whoever is kind of orchestrating the genocide of Gaza, the only difference is which political party would be doing it and what's the name of that individual who is kind of spearheading these atrocities um, in mass scale. I don't really see how this can honestly get worse under Donald Trump. I get it. Trump has a lot of illiberal policies. Uh, the Muslim ban still kind of really permeates with us. It still sticks with us. We don't think he's an ally in the community, but I think we also need to ask ourselves whether members of the Uncommitted movement or just Arab Americans here in Michigan and kind of nationwide, we really should have that thinking and about, oh, well, Trump's going to accelerate the killing. If you look at what's happening right now in Gaza and in the illegally occupied West Bank and in East Jerusalem and in Bethlehem, there is a mass ethnic cleansing campaign happening in the West Bank on the dime, on the watch of the Democrats, who to this day are sending assault rifles and sniper rifles to kill American citizens in these occupied territories to build illegal settlements. to displace and push Palestinians into Jordan, into Egypt. I mean, what are we fearing here in particular? I think the strategy should be to say, listen, we are not going to vote for you because we're going to send a message that being ardently anti-Palestinian and pro-Israel is going to have significant electoral consequences, and not just this election, but in future ones. I don't like this messaging, and I have great respect for the Uncommitted movement. I think they're pioneers. They've done an amazing job invigorating the Arab American vote. I think they've helped given us great political power within this country, so I'm not disparaging them. But by falling back to the fear mongering of Donald Trump, we're playing right into the Democrats' hands. There is also no difference, I would say, in the America that we're living under now than also what the kind of America that Trump threatens to kind of actualize, right? We've seen rampant Islamophobia here in this country. Um, we're talking about over 7,000 incidents of Islamophobic and anti-Arab cases of anti-Arab hatred since October 7th. And if you also look at the immigration policies of the Biden administration, they've used kind of the legal modalities and framework of Trump's Muslim ban to maintain some very hawkish neoconservative immigration policies. We are dealing already with the Trump administration right now. I mean, Kamala Harris has been endorsed by Dick Cheney, by George Bush. I mean, she's a neocon. So if you're afraid of Donald Trump, the neocon, then why aren't you afraid of Kamala Harris, the neocon? They're the same exact thing.
Well, there was another component of their statement that I also, again, I'm not I know some people, I've seen on Twitter and even here are criticizing them. I'm not Arab American, so I don't think it's appropriate for, people who are not experiencing this firsthand to, be Monday morning quarterbacks or tell people, your strategy is right or wrong. But I do think it's fair to ask questions. And they said, they also think with Trump, the domestic crackdown in America will get a lot worse. And to that, I just think that's foolish, frankly, because, we've been covering protests at Status Coup way more than any other outlet. We've covered on the ground for years, Black Lives Matter protests, healthcare, climate. And over this last almost a year now, John Farina has covered almost 100 ceasefire protests for us. Ceasefire, the student protests, New York, DC, Chicago. We've had some in LA. And the crackdown is here under a Democratic president, under Democratic governors. It wouldn't get better under Republicans. Trump, talks about deporting Palestinians and deporting protesters. I think he'd have a lot of problems legally doing that. But the crackdowns are there. They're trying to, get professors fired who are, semi pro-Palestinian. They're trying to create laws in Congress to label any resistance or protest anti-Semitic, which is very vague and to me very dangerous. Obviously, we've seen what the police have done to these protesters. They're basically trying to damage college students' ability, in the future to get a job by basically putting them on a blacklist that they protested. So I think the crackdown is already here. Sure, you could say, well, Donald Trump will be a lot more aggressive and ferocious and shameless about it. Okay, but tangibly, how much worse is it going to? That thinking that, well, it could get worse. Well, then you're kind of saying we'd still prefer the fascism, just in a less vile way, I guess.
Yeah, allow me to kind of build off all those points more. You talked about the student protests here in Michigan. There were two really kind of, I think, disturbing cases that don't really get spoken about enough, right? And I want viewers to just think about this for a second and tell me, what do you think this happened under, a Democratic or Republican administration? I think about 5 or 6 months ago, there was a female student protester at Wayne State University. She was Muslim. I also believe she was Palestinian. She was demonstrating. She was, using the pro-Palestine slogans, and she was assaulted by Detroit police and by Wayne State police. And in front of everybody, they forcefully made her remove her hijab. People were taking photos of her hair. People were taking pictures of her Her identity leaked. It was a very embarrassing moment for her. I haven't been able to get in touch with her, but I do know people around the situation have said that she was very frightened by what happened, right? Those type of civil infringements upon people, right, upon Arab and Muslims in the United States, Democrats are already telling us, oh, this is going to happen if you vote for Trump, but it already happened. Now, let's fast forward to present day. At the University of Michigan, there were a lot of other pro-Palestine protests. And essentially, if you protested at the DAG, which is kind of like the center of the University of Michigan's campus, you were arrested. I have spoken with students at the University of Michigan who told me the police came to campus with the sole intention of arresting and beating up pro-Palestine protesters. And the university, not just here in Michigan, but in other places across the country, are hiring private security firms to manage security on campus and also detain pro-Palestine students, and visibly Arab and Muslim women and other protesters as well. Dana Nessel, who is a Democratic Attorney General here for the state of Michigan, is already charging students with 2 years of jail for just trespassing. They didn't hit anybody. They didn't commit a hate crime. They didn't bring a weapon. They didn't bring drugs. They didn't hurt anybody. 2 years in jail for just walking. What type of fascism and authoritarianism is already happening now? It really can't get any worse under Donald Trump. It's already happening. Maybe we could argue scale, but I already say we've already seen intensification of scale of kind of the crackdown on pro-Palestine dissent. I don't think it's fair for other people, whether outside or inside the community, to say that we need to fear Trump. Trump's America is already here. What we need to be doing, instead of this fear-mongering, is take these moments and build an infrastructure within Congress, like an AIPAC or the ADL, for Palestinians that can lobby members of Congress to have pro-Palestine views. That needs to be the name of the game now. I don't care about Donald Trump. I don't care about Kamala Harris. I don't care about any, honestly, even of these other third-party candidates who people have the right to vote for who aren't going to win. We need to use this moment and crystallize it within our identity and use it to create a new political movement to make sure that this never happens to our community again and a genocide never happens against the Palestinian people again.
Well, I also think we have to, it's not just the horrific, slaughter and genocide going on. You have to just think human dignity here too, right? And I don't know. I have a hard, it's kind of like, I know this is a bad analogy, but it's the only thing I can think of. When you're younger, and if you're a guy or if you're a girl, and you really have a crush on someone, but they're just leading you on, and you treat them so nicely, but they're kind of just screwing with your mind, screwing with your emotions, this and that, and your friends tell you you're wasting your time. You're wasting your time. Again, terrible analogy, but you couldn't even get a speaker. They would not even recognize your humanity. This is a party talking about inclusivity, and we're a big tent. They would not allow a speaker, frankly, even a speaker who, I believe it was the Georgia senator, who's Palestinian American, is very pro-Democrat and was going to endorse Kamala Harris on the stage. They would not allow her to speak because they basically wanted no mention of the slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza. And then it seems from the reporting that she would not even meet with them when she had a deadline to meet with them for a month or two. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know if somebody tells you who they are or somebody tells you what you mean or don't mean to them, believe them. And this is speculation, but my belief is she's making these decisions basically to say, I could win by spitting even if I spit in their face, because she doesn't want to piss off her very, very, very rich pro-Israel Zionist donors. Mm-hmm. I believe that's what's going on here. If you look at the DNC, who is up in the boxes, the VIP boxes up there? Mm-hmm. There was a lot of heavy-duty donors who are net worth billions of dollars, who some of them are Jewish, some of them aren't, but all of them are hardcore Zionists. And I think they didn't want that message on stage. I think they didn't want that type of inclusivity on stage. And I think Kamala Harris couldn't even do the gesture, even if there was no policy change with it, to go there and talk to people in Dearborn, which politically would have been smart for her, but mm-hmm. she wouldn't do it. So I understand, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand the mentality, fight for another day, get rid of Trump and we'll fight her on day one. But I don't, what are you going to fight her to do? She's already told you. She told you who she is. She's not, she wouldn't even meet with you. She wouldn't even give you a voice on the stage.
Yeah.
And I don't see any evidence that she would withhold any weapons from Israel. So your thoughts on that in terms of Uncommitted? Their message seems to be the Democratic Party wants nothing but for us to leave them and for us not to try and get involved, try and grow within their party, the Palestinian American movement. We're not going anywhere. But why would you want to grow in that party if they're basically telling you you might as well be the, the roach at the bottom of their sneaker?
Yeah, I mean, I could really only speak for myself on this, but I think the arguments some may have, and of course this is a respectful retort, is that there are a lot of very sympathetic figures within the Democratic Party towards Palestinians, right? People not named Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Nancy Pelosi, people who have actually now slowly started to come to a realization that kind of the blind deference, the unwavering military support to Israel is not only bad for national security interests of the United States, but also is a stain on the reputation of the United States for being a quote-unquote human rights leader. And maybe there is a fear amongst people in the Uncommitted movement that those connections and that infrastructure that they've grown, if they come out too hard against the party, this might create a level of resentment within the kind of mainstream Democratic atmosphere, or even people outside of that, maybe more progressives, and say, you know what, you cost us the election. We really don't want you here. But I would also retort by saying, if that's their reaction, were they ever really our friends? Did they ever really support us? Did they ever really have our back? You also made a really good point about AIPAC that I think we need to talk about here. At that convention, there was a woman, a visibly Muslim woman in hijab, who was being assaulted with a sign, a pro-Biden sign, getting hit on the head. And Harris didn't say anything. And then, kind of going back to trying to please AIPAC, at least what I think, is that during the last presidential debate, Donald Trump told Kamala Harris, you hate Israel, you hate the Arabs. And how did Kamala Harris reflexively respond? No, that's not true. I defend Israel's right to defend itself. She made no reference of the Palestinians. She made no reference of the Arabs. And it's because of her close connection to AIPAC that this type of Palestinian erasure is being incentivized, which is what I think now, if you look at these kind of grassroots pro-Palestine movements here in the U.S., the focus needs to be on garnering that bottom-up infrastructure and growing it out in a way where the influence can grow within both sides of the political aisle and create an incentivization for these congressional members to care about Palestine. I'm going to say it loudly and proudly. We need a Palestinian AIPAC. We also need a Palestinian AIPAC in a way that's going to send a message to just regular working class people that blind deference to Israel, that blind, okay, well, I see that comment. I'll address that bullshit in a minute. Anyways, fuck that. Sorry. So we need to get on the horn of building that same type of infrastructure, because if you look at what AIPAC was able to do to Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, they were able to put tens of millions of dollars into their election to unseat them. We need to create maybe not a same financial infrastructure, but a good financial infrastructure enough to tell these people on both sides of the political aisle, listen, you can abandon AIPAC. You can abandon these pro-Israel policies. It's better if you support the Palestinians, their rights, not send bombs to go kill people when there are working class issues here in the United States that we need to focus on, right? That might be better for us long term than this constant fear mongering of, oh, we can't pick Republicans and the lesser of two evils and so on and so forth. I also want to say something about that comment about people around.
Let me just I just want to say something real quick and then I'll let you, because David wrote, Jordan, you're a naive guest. If Trump gets elected, he starts rounding up Palestinians, institutes Project 2025. We'll see how naive guest feels. David, I think that's a little disrespectful, but I just want to make people understand this is not just about the Palestinian genocide right now. I don't think a lot of people realize that we already have like a lot of mini Project 2025s going on all over the United States, in local municipalities, in state government. When I hear this, again, what Trump wants to do and what the Republicans want to do is dangerous. But we have to be able to have two thoughts in our mind at the same time. I could tell you, because I've reported across this country, there are unelected bureaucrats including in Michigan. You ever hear of the emergency manager laws that poison Flint and have done really bad things to Detroit and other cities? There's a lot of unelected bureaucrats and emergency declarations going on that are doing all sorts of bad things, and they're happening under Democrats too. So this notion of Project 2025 as this dystopian, scarier thing, you gotta realize that there's a lot of undemocratic things already happening. And if I had the time, I'd go through a list. Sorry, I just wanted people to know that because I keep hearing about Project 2025 and this fear mongering. Yes, Trump is no good, but let's not pretend that we have some strong, thriving democracy now. We do not. Your thoughts?
My thoughts on that is this. First and foremost, David, I reckon you're probably a Democrat or you're probably a Harris supporter, and your political proclivities don't really bother me. But here's what bothered me is that the utter racism that you spew as a Democrat, I presume, is no different than the racism and hatred and Islamophobia that's spewed from the right. You and your political party, the Democrats, have become the same thing that you bemoan from the hawkish neocon right. You guys aren't any different. And this is ultimately the type of sentiment right now that's being driven home in the Arab and Muslim community here in Michigan, is that either way, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. There is not a difference between these political parties whatsoever. There are many Project 2025s going around. Like I told you, the Attorney General of Michigan, Dana Nessel, who operates under Gretchen Whitmer, who's expressed some pro-Israel sympathies over the past year, has said nothing about her Palestinian Arab constituents, are doing everything they can to literally ruin kids' lives. You tell me what's democratic about that, right? The type of authoritarianism that you think is good to espouse under Republicans can't happen under Democrats. It's already here. But even more so, your Islamophobia is showing. Are you going to be proud of the fact that if Trump does win, they round up Muslims and deport us all? Is that a sight you want to see just to say that you told us so? Because ultimately, when we see this tells us that we can never vote for Democrats again. And guess what? I never will. They've orchestrated this genocide and the hatred against Arabs and Muslims here. I honestly don't think any self-respecting Arab or Muslim should vote Democrat this upcoming election. Absolutely no way in hell. Are you kidding me? I don't care if the Republicans starting to do worse because it can't get any worse than this.
Right. And by the way, like, yes, Donald Trump's up, but there are still technically laws in America that even dictator Trump he can't just round up Palestinian Americans and deport them.
Yeah.
He could huff and puff about it, but I mean, courts would step in. Go ahead.
Yeah, and to briefly jump in on that, courts already stepped in against Trump in 2016, 2017, when him and Rudy Giuliani tried to institute a Muslim ban. I think like half the Supreme Courts in the country said hell no to that. And let's even focus on his immigration policies. This guy cannot build a wall. He cannot get all the Muslims out of here. You're threatening this clown with me trying to portray him as a dictator? Come on. I mean, it's just so silly. It's just so silly. He's bad, but I just don't like this idea that a guy that couldn't do half of what he said, I'm supposed to be afraid of. I'm just not going to buy into that.
I hate to shift to the electoral map because obviously this is about life and death and morality, but I do think it's important to ask you because you're on the ground in Michigan, you know Dearborn, you're from Dearborn, because I'm just seeing a lot of pundits reading polls and a lot of polls coming out. Painting a rosier picture of Michigan for Kamala Harris. Some polls have her up 4 to 5 points. I know Michigan pretty well. I don't live there, but I've been there over 20 times. I know Detroit. I know Flint. I know. And by the way, just pointing out, Dana Nessel, the AG, besides what you described, also sabotaged the Flint criminal investigation and screwed over the poisoned people of Flint. And she's going to run for governor, so keep that in mind, Michigan. But let me first play this clip and see if you agree, because I interviewed Layla, who is Layla El Abad. She is one of the heads of Uncommitted when I was in Dearborn, and I asked her if Kamala Harris doesn't change her policy, could it cost her Michigan? She was pretty emphatic that it would. This was about 2 months ago. Let's play that clip, Colin. Loses Michigan, she has very few options for getting 270 electoral votes. So I think Michigan is just as critical. And by the numbers, I failed math, but there's about 150,000 or so registered voters, Arab American voters
Arab American
out of
voters.
Dearborn.
Yes.
And Biden won Michigan by about 150,000 votes. So it seems to me if you lose enough voters here, Harris, she probably will lose Michigan.
Yeah, 100%. The fact that Biden in 2020 could not win his race to the White House without Michigan, and that win came from Muslim and largely from Muslim and Arab American voters. Like you said, he won Michigan by roughly 155,000 votes, and there was 145,000 Muslim and Arab Americans that voted in that election. I voted for Biden at that time. I organized and built a voting block of my community members and friends and family to vote for Joe Biden at that time, based on the campaign promises that he used while he was here in Michigan, that Arab Americans and Muslim Americans would not have to face the dehumanization and the demonization that we were experiencing through the Trump presidency and through policies like the Muslim ban. Only for us to now feel this very deep betrayal, not only by Biden and his administration, but the Democratic Party, who have not shown that they care about what is happening to our brothers and sisters in Palestine. There are folks here in Dearborn, Michigan, who know firsthand the impact of American-funded bombs. And right now, we are pretty much faced with an impossible choice, even with VP Harris as the presumptive nominee, because we haven't seen that shift in policy yet from her. We are being asked to choose between a candidate that supports a far right-wing government to carry out war crimes against Palestinians. I think right now we need more than ever from VP Harris a guarantee that she will adopt the demands of our movement and adopt the demands of this coalition that are asking and demanding the end of the killing of Palestinians and occupation of Palestinians. And we just haven't gotten that yet.
So that was before the DNC and before they did their whole not allow a Palestinian speaker. She happened, I didn't know this at the time, but she happens to be the sister of Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. But to be clear, because I saw someone in the chat, I'm not doing polling denialism. I acknowledge the polls right now show Harris is winning in Michigan. She very well could win Michigan. With that said, we now have two elections and a pattern here. Typically, the polls have underrepresented Donald Trump's support, not just nationally, but in these swing states. There's a lot of debate among pollsters why that is, but in my experience, they have not intentionally, but they just, for whatever reason, have a hard time reaching all of his voters, or all of his voters don't tell pollsters that they're voting for him. With that said, if it says that Kamala Harris is up by, let's say, 4 or 5 points in Michigan, based on my experience, I would put that closer to she's up by 1 or 2 points. If it says she's up by 2 or 3 points, I would say it's tied. And why, to me, if the election were held today, I don't think it's a slam dunk she's going to win Michigan, despite what the polls have said. Because, again, the polls had Hillary Clinton winning in Michigan. The polls also had Joe Biden winning by more than he won in Michigan. But there are Arab communities outside of Dearborn. There's Arab Americans in Detroit, the city of Detroit. Dearborn is kind of a suburb of Detroit. There's also a decent amount of Arab Americans in Flint. So I believe, you would know better than me, there's a good chance she's going to lose 60 to 70% of Arab American support from where Biden was. And then, on a separate issue, I don't think it's such an insignificant number based on conversations I've had and activists I'm talking to. There seems to be a shift among black men, not all black men, but a lot of them, over to Donald Trump. So, I mean, I don't think we can emphatically say Trump's going to win, but I also don't think it's, as the polls are showing, it's so clear that she is going to win Michigan. And I also don't think, with more and more information coming out now, even with Uncommitted basically telling people to vote against Trump, which I don't know what that means other than vote for her. By the Democratic Party's basic middle finger to Palestinian Americans, I don't really know why Jill Stein wouldn't do incredibly well in Michigan, and I don't really know why she presented the numbers. The amount of registered Arab Americans was the margin that Biden won by in 2020. So where am I missing it that Kamala Harris is definitely going to win Michigan, which is what, not definitely, but we're being fed right now by the media that she's up by 4 or 5 points there.
So I don't really think you're missing anything. Let me kind of tackle that question in 3 different ways. First and foremost, I think maybe the question we should be asking is Jill Stein's support in Michigan being properly represented? Like I said, I was at the Arab Convention last week in Dearborn. The leaders of the ADC brought Jill Stein to their events on the first 3 days. There were hundreds of people there the first day. All of them had said they were going to vote for Jill Stein, a lot of them. Anytime Jill Stein spoke, anytime she said anything, the whole room stood up on their feet and clapped, I promise you, for minutes on end out. So bad, so long to the point where the kind of like the orchestrators of the convention had to say, okay, let's sit down, let's stop clapping. There is a very good chance Jill Stein can play spoiler in Michigan and cost Kamala Harris the election. Going back to Layla's point, there has been multiple olive branches extended by grassroots Palestinian Arab American leaders at the Democratic Party to have them listen to us, adopt our strategies, maybe even not adopt them immediately, but just sit down, hear us out, and listen to us and make us feel like we're a part of the equation. They've rebuffed us several times. This is going to have significant electoral and political consequences for Democrats. Another point I want to make is this. Michigan is a historically Democratic state, right? It's only voted red 2 times since the Carter administration, maybe going back before that. The fact that she's only up 3, 4, 5 points in Michigan should be keeping Kamala Harris up at night and giving her cold sweats. Because like you said, if it's 5 points, it's probably 2. If it's 4 points, she's probably losing. Based off the people that I have spoken to, people who are either supporting Jill Stein or either supporting Cornel West, or either ambivalent on just voting, is that they just don't see any possible scenario in which Kamala Harris could win. I've actually been following Nate Silver's election models pretty packed all day, every day on Twitter. And I think a couple of days ago, his model actually had Kamala Harris losing Michigan and losing very badly in the election. And I think another unforgotten point is this, and I don't want people to interpret this as an endorsement of Donald Trump. There are a lot of things
to be clear, I just want to confirm, because some people were smearing you in the chat, you're not voting for Donald Trump.
Absolutely not. I mean, if it's up to me, I'm a registered voter going to vote, but I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. Both of them are significantly evil. I'm just telling you like it is. I'm pulling up polling numbers to you. I referred to I showed you the car numbers earlier that said on the week of August 27th, amongst Arab and Muslim Americans in Michigan, Trump was polling at 18%, Jill Stein at 40%, Kamala Harris is 12%. I don't make up the rules. I don't do the polling. I'm just telling you what I see. But my point about the possibility of Trump winning in Michigan, there are 2 things people need to recognize, is that there are other issues outside of Palestine, which of course is the most salient one here, that is also pushing people to the right. Let me explain. As much as I don't like Donald Trump and I hate him, here's what the average American sees. Not me, the average American. I try to talk to other people as a journalist besides Arab Americans and Muslims. When he was president, was there ever a conversation about Russia using tactical nukes in Ukraine? Were we even talking about the idea of NATO invoking Conventions 4, 5, and 6 to possibly fight Russia? We're using Ukraine as a proxy right now, and it's destabilizing Europe. Has there ever been this much bloodshed in the Middle East? To some degree, yes. He was supporting the war in Yemen, and Donald Trump was supporting the Gulf states to go after Sudan, to go after Yemen, which was terrible. But also, average Americans who have working class issues remember the time during COVID when bread was like $6 and you couldn't get gas, and people were getting laid off, and people, even Democrats, Democratic voters, people who even supported Gretchen Whitmer, were getting so frustrated with just like these severe COVID lockdowns, and they still got a bad taste in their mouth about that. Again, this isn't my point of view. This is what other people are saying. So they're saying, you know what? Hell with everything else. Maybe let's just vote for Donald Trump because, in their eyes, in their opinion, the world was safer and the economy was better. I'm using air quotes because those are not my views. Those are the views of others. So we can't always just make it about one thing or the other. Yeah, there's a real possibility Kamala Harris is going to lose. And it's not just because of Kamala, but also the fact that she's an extension of Joe Biden, and people hate Joe Biden. They loathe Joe Biden. So it might just be a spike vote. So, yeah, I'm not supporting Donald Trump, but these polling, in my opinion, just they're really not that accurate. I've seen it too many times.
You know, I also think there's a lot of elements, particularly in Michigan, that are hard to poll. And what I mean by that is RFK is still on the ballot in Michigan. He has endorsed Trump. He's a fraud, but he's still on the ballot. They would not remove him from the ballot. And there's a good amount of people that are not really into politics and might not even know that he dropped out and are just going to see his name on the ballot and vote for him.
Yeah.
So those, some research said that hurt Biden more. RFK was hurting Biden more. Some says it hurts Trump more. I don't know, but he's still on the ballot. He's still on the ballot. And for those RFK supporters who know he dropped out, RFK endorsed Trump. So some of them might go to Trump because RFK endorsed him. So that's number one. You also have the Arab American population, as we've already discussed. Also, Democrats have to do, in Michigan, for a Democrat to win, I mean, you have to do extremely well in Detroit, which is a majority black city, and the suburbs around Detroit. Well, I've been to Michigan over 20 times, and I can tell you, Detroit's majority black, and if Trump wins, save this video, he's going to do better than he did before among black men, because I'm hearing from those I talk to and those on the ground in Detroit that there's perhaps a not insignificant number of black men moving over to Trump for many reasons, but simply just prices were lower under Trump. There's context to that, obviously, but they just look at it, think I don't like Trump, but whatever. I was making more money. Things weren't as expensive. And then you have kind of that the swing voter in Macomb County, this and that can kind of go either way. Michigan also has a lot of big colleges, and young people it's not just Arab Americans. A lot of young people, which Democrats also need young people to win. That's why they won in 2022. That's why they overperformed in the midterms, because more young people came out. Well, who do you see at these college campuses? Who do you see in the streets? It's young people. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying the polls themselves aren't, they're not intentionally lying. There are polls that are showing her up, but polls are often wrong for a variety of reasons. And for whatever reason, and this has been a debate among pollsters and pundits, why are they so wrong on Trump? Because even in 2020, even though he lost, he overperformed 2016. He got millions of more votes that were not showing up at the polls. So just keep that in mind, because I think if she loses Michigan, I think she's going to lose the election. Everyone's focused on Pennsylvania. I understand Pennsylvania has 4 more electoral college votes, but if she loses Michigan, then she has to win both Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and another swing state. If she wins Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, that's it. She's won, because that's 270 votes. But if she loses Michigan, she's going to have to win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and one of these other swing states, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, or North Carolina. So take that for what it's worth. Before we go, just kind of tell people, we've been talking about Kamala Harris and all this, but tell people where things are in the mentality of Dearborn, because I was there a month ago, and obviously people are out living their lives, but there's people in Dearborn who have lost 15, 20 family members that died in Gaza. Mm-hmm. And now you have this expanding to Lebanon. I'm sure that people they were already kind of on edge, but now I'm sure even more.
Yeah, I mean, the community is, just really overran by grief and sadness. And I think right now, for a lot of Arab Americans in Dearborn, they're trying to kind of channel that sadness and that grief, and also that feeling of political alienation that neither political party sees them as human beings, and they're trying to transform it into political action, right? And this is further evidenced by the formerly abandoned Biden-Harris movement, and of course the Uncommitted movement, and we're seeing that, you know, appearing on college campuses all over the state of Michigan. The mood is very distraught. There's just really a lot of pessimism, not really just about the election, but also the future of the Palestinian people. Where do the Palestinians go from here? Are they ever going to have equal rights in the occupied territories? Are they ever going to have their own country? What's going to be the fate of Gaza? And I think the question, the quiet question, you know, that's being kind of debated amongst all of us here is that, like, for the past 70 or so years, the United States has, you know, hitched their wagons to Israel militarily. There was actually a study done by the Council on Foreign Relations that I actually had just cited in another article that I did. We've given $400 billion to Israel military aid since 1948. Okay, that's like 200 billion more than the next country on that list, Egypt. All these actions, all that support for Israel
could have replaced Flint's infrastructure 400 times.
Yep.
with those numbers. Go ahead.
You know, the question is, how are we going to actually reallocate those funds? And the hope is that with the disruption in the military industrial complex, right, that there will be more focus on working class issues, human rights issues here, but also, will there even be a Palestinian people? I think, like, this is what we're really scared about. Like, we're trying not to show this fear a lot, but it's that if you look at the data and if you look at what's happening recently in the occupied West Bank, I mean, Palestinians are being emptied out of their homes, their cities, their land. They're being pushed into other foreign countries. And the question is now is, how do we mobilize to make sure that the Palestinians are never going to go anywhere? And this is why this is such like an ossified issue here in Dearborn. It's because we have so many friends and family members who are Palestinian. We don't want to see them go away. This is the move right now. And it kind of just goes back and ties into a point that I was making, is that there is now a conversation amongst people here, Arab American groups, citizens, saying, you know what, we got to find a way to mobilize politically, challenge AIPAC. Because if you break AIPAC's grip on Congress, then all of a sudden that opens up a lot of other doors for the Palestinians, their rights, and also really just working class issues in general.
Absolutely. Where can people find your work? Because you've been writing in several outlets and doing good work.
Thank you. I'm primarily on Twitter. So my Twitter handle is Abdel A1924. You can find my work in The Hill, in Foreign Policy, which I recently written an article for Foreign Policy discussing much of the topics that we have discussed here today. Antiwar.com, New Arab Responsible Statecraft, and I'm hoping to have another article come out, I hope tomorrow or either Saturday, focusing on kind of the need to create a pro-Palestine infrastructure within Congress. So keep an eye out. I'm just trying to be a spokesperson for my people. It's not really about me. It's about really kind of doing the right thing and hopefully kind of creating that inertia for change, and that we all can look back collectively on the work of Palestinians and say, yeah, we did this. We created that change.
Absolutely. And I just put your Twitter in the chat, so people can click on that, follow you on Twitter, and we'll definitely keep in touch. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much, Jordan. I appreciate having me on. Great show.
Absolutely. Thanks. So that was Abdel in Dearborn. And yeah, I mean, I hope to have Layla on from Uncommitted. She said she'd come on, but was obviously busy today, given that they just announced today that they were not endorsing Kamala Harris. You know, I had this whole poor Colin. I had him get all this stuff together because I wanted to do a water report on all the areas you don't know about in America that are fucked up, including an update on the West Virginia water crisis, because we covered that. You know what? I think we could do West Virginia. I'll save the other ones for now. So before I go, I want to update you on the West Virginia water crisis, which the media is not covering. Shocker that the media isn't covering any of this. So let's start with, we went there to Coal Country, West Virginia, which is southern West Virginia, at the end of last year. No, this was in March of this year. Let's play the first clip, Colin, to remind people the situation there.
On the 12th, Jamie the owner of the trailer calls me, and this whole place looks like a lake. He just woke up one morning.
This whole backyard right here?
Yes,
Okay.
the whole front, everything. Well, he thought he had a water leak, and when he took a shovel and shoveled, phew, it spewed out like oil, and it hit him in the face. And he didn't realize the magnitude of it until he started seeing the slurry, chemical, it looked like a chemical-based oil coming out. And then after I got down here, we put a little ditch towards the creek because the DEP come out here that day.
DEP is the
West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection told him to go ahead and put it in the creek because it was getting around his heat pump and they was afraid it was going to get electrocuted. And after we was here for a while, we noticed what was coming out over in the other lot of another artesian well. And it was just, it was something out of a war scene. I mean, this was nothing compared to what we had coming out over in the other field.
So a private well, private water wells, residents all over this community, most of them have water wells, and it's supposed to be water from the aquifer.
Yes.
But that looks like
it's coming from a coal mines. They're
Right.
saying it's coming from a coal mines, yeah.
and there's coal mines all over the place here.
Yes. There's one right there that went bankrupt in 2017, and it's supposed to be as big as Chicago.
Wow.
Underneath. And they said it filled up with water. And that's why it started coming out artesian. That's their theory. But the community has different theories of what's going on here. We've tested all the water, none of it matches.
Meaning the Department of Environmental Protection,
Right.
they tested, they say everything's fine, which I've heard in many other places.
Yes.
It's always fine when they
Yes.
test it. But independent testing that you guys did had very, very high levels of what?
Arsenic, the iron was 2 million, the arsenic was 388, and then whatever else was on that.
Lead was
Yeah.
about 2 something.
Yeah, it was real, it was just, you
Yeah.
know, through the roof.
Lead is supposed to be 15 parts per billion,
Mhm.
which, by the way, is a nonsense number anyway. It's supposed to be 0. The arsenic, I believe, was a couple hundred times higher than it's supposed to be. You also shouldn't have arsenic in your water. And iron was about, what, 2 million
2
on
million.
that test?
2 million.
And iron, when you have high levels of iron, it breeds bacteria. That's part of what happened in Flint. But I want to talk about, you got white stuff, black stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but it sure looks like there's some sediment in there. And I've never been down in a coal mine, but you know the coal mines around here.
Yeah.
Does this kind of look like it could have some contamination from there?
Yes, the University of Virginia Tech come in here, the biologist said that's a living organism. It's growing.
So if you're new to this, bottom line, this is coal country. There's coal mining everywhere around this area. It's one of the poorest counties in America. And essentially, the coal companies have been intentionally flooding the mines. Based on my reporting and sources on the ground there, they've been intentionally flooding their own coal mines in order to extract what they call coal bed methane, which is a new form of natural gas that is very lucrative and very expensive. So they've been intentionally flooding the coal mines. And when they're intentionally flooding the coal mines, that the byproducts of coal mining, which include oil and the mine water, is leaking out into people's water. I want to play a few more clips from our reporting trip there. Again, we're one of the only outlets in America, corporate or independent, that have gone there and spoke with the people. And I could tell you, all over that community, it smelled like shit. Let's play the next one. In Pineville, West Virginia. We're here with Lydia and Judy. And her name? Deneen. Lost her voice, though, unfortunately. We are right just a stone's throw away from where the creek is in the backyard. where there is all sorts of foul stuff growing. The white stuff that we saw in Indian Creek is right in the backyard. The green, it almost looks like a fungus kind of thing. It stinks, and their garage also stinks because it was flooded by this contaminated water. And this started last year in the winter, springtime.
February or March.
So tell me, you guys are on city water, but still, all that stuff, all that water started spraying up out of a well back there. When did you notice? How did you notice something was wrong to start?
It was in the yard and stuff. You could see it, and then you could smell it.
What did it smell like?
Rotten eggs. Yeah, and different smells every time. It gets strong.
And over the summer when it was hotter, did the smell get worse?
Yes, really bad. Really bad. You can it smell like a gas smell, rotten eggs. It's just really bad.
And tell me about symptoms, because you guys have had symptoms. You had sores, so you see that right there. See on the leg. And did you have that before this started? Wow.
She doesn't have a spleen either, so her infections, you know, she can't really fight them.
Right.
She can't talk.
When did because she doesn't have a spleen.
No, not because of that. She can't talk because all them fumes are coming into her bedroom from that garage. I mean, she's breathing it. And
how long has she been having problems talking for?
how long would you say? Months, 9 months, maybe longer.
And you could smell it in your bedroom. Right here is her bedroom. I smell it here. And right now it's colder, but in the hot, it's worse. And tell me about your, you were having symptoms too, even though you don't live here.
Headaches, and I gotta go see a specialist over my stomach right now. Where just wanting to puke. I just don't have no appetite and stuff. But yeah, the headaches, the dryness in my mouth, the funny taste in my mouth. You
seem fairly young. I don't know. I mean, I'm not.
I'll be 41 next month.
Right. So before all this, were you relatively healthy?
Yeah, I didn't have no problem. I can get doctor records for you.
And not just the humans, but your cats have had issues. Were they ever drinking out of the creek or just inhaling? Inhaling. Yeah. So the cats were also smelling this, and you've had to take them to the vet for respiratory stuff?
Yes.
Right.
Now when they were born, they can meow. They can't meow.
So what you're saying is when they were born, they could meow, and now they can't, which is pretty messed up. So to be clear, when we were there, we were seeing water with white, stringy stuff in it that looked like a bacteria. I saw water that had kind of green fungus. And when I say see, I'm also telling you smell. It stinks. Rotten eggs, in some cases, like oil. I saw water with an oily sheen on it. And residents there, I was there in March. And when I was there in March, residents were telling me that you're talking hundreds of residents for a year have all had significant symptoms, nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, and nothing was being done. There was not even media coverage over this. Let's play the next clip, Colin. It's been seeing a whole lot of patients with similar symptoms. So the residents who have been coming in, they're largely on private well water. What are the main symptoms you've been seeing?
The main symptoms would be nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, coughing in some cases, fever, and abdominal cramps.
Headaches, and I gotta go see a specialist over my stomach right now. Where just wanting to puke. I just don't have no appetite and stuff. But yeah, the headaches, the dryness in my mouth, the funny taste in my mouth. You
seem fairly young. I don't know. I mean, I'm not.
I'll be 41 next month.
Right. So before all this, were you relatively healthy?
Yeah, I didn't have no problem. I can get doctor records for you.
I've lost a lot of weight.
They have both of them.
Yeah.
Do you know of other people in this area that are having health issues?
I believe everyone around here, everybody, this whole community.
Similar symptoms.
Yeah.
About a year ago, we know that there was residents in Pineville, their wells, water wells shooting up, flooding of their backyards, front yards, smelly water, discolored water. Don't know exactly the source of contamination, but from what I've looked at, there's white, stringy stuff in the water. We've seen brown, orange type of water coming out. The symptoms you're seeing, which are a lot of stomach symptoms, are those consistent with, because some of the testing showed lead, arsenic, manganese, and iron.
Yes, and the surfactants that's in the water too. Your body's way of digesting it or trying to digest those things would be diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, weight loss because you're going to be sick and not be able to eat.
And the surfactants, just so the audience knows, that's kind of a byproduct of industrial cleaner.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And the people coming in with diarrhea, this kind of stuff, are they generally, middle-aged people? We're not only talking about elderly people here.
No, it's all ages, from children to middle-aged to elderly.
And we know that residents here, I've talked to some people that have been losing weight kind of rapidly. Have you heard from patients that?
I have.
What about, I know this is a human doctor, but I've also been hearing about dogs getting sick, cats, deer, and your animals have died. Tell me about your dogs and other animals.
I've been seeing coons, been seeing deer dead, seen my dogs get this like they're sick one day and they're dead the next before you can even take them to the vet or anything.
Have you heard from patients about their animals?
Yes, I just had a lady tell me today that she had 12 goats that passed away for no known reason.
These are mostly residents that live across the creek, Indian Creek, and they have private well water. And we know that there's a lot of coal mining and, gas wells around this area.
Yes.
And you tested them for, various things, and it was all coming up negative?
All negative.
What kind of stuff was tested?
For COVIDs, flu A, flu B, strep.
And is there anything you could really do for diarrhea, vomiting, other than like anti-nausea stuff? Was there stuff you were able to give them that was helping, or it's still acting up?
It's still continuing, and with your body, you don't really want it to stop. If there's a toxin in your body, you want your body to be able to pass it, so you want them to continue vomiting or diarrhea to get rid of it. But if they give them something, and it's only going to help for a little while, and if they're continuing to drink this water, it's just going to come back. They're going to stay sick. And that's what we're seeing.
Could these kind of things, right now it's causing, the stomach stuff, but could this lead to potentially worse issues down the road?
Yes. Digesting all these chemicals that we are seeing that has been tested for these wells can cause cancer. It can cause all kinds of different things. So, especially if it's not treated. So if they're continuing to drink this and they're not being notified that, hey, this water's really bad and has all these chemicals, and they just keep drinking it, it's not going to be a good result in the end.
And is the local health department, the local county, the environmental department, has there been any communication with local health?
There has. I have not been notified of that.
Colin, come on for a minute. What do you got? 27 dogs and cats?
Somewhere around there.
People are kind of attached to their animals in this country. And, in some cases, maybe if 20 dogs and cats were killed, people might care more than 20 school children, right? So don't you think if dogs, cats, goats, sheep, deer are dropping like flies, the media might care to cover it?
Yeah, especially like anyone who's ever owned a cat, like hearing that story of the kitties who meowed and then slowly lost their voice is very sad. And so you'd think the media, if nothing else, they usually, the meme of them always like covering like a cat beauty pageant or something like that, but you can't even get them to cover such an obvious, like what would be like a great local news story of like investigating why people's cats, beloved cat. We're seeing what's happening when people think what could be a made up story of people eating their pets is a national sensation repeated by the president, but a company poisoning and potentially killing who knows how many pets is on nobody's radar.
He doesn't literally have 27. I think he has 7, not 27.
7 total,
Close.
yes.
Yes, close enough. So I want to play 2 more clips because we're getting to the update, but I wanted you to know how bad it was before I update you. So then let's get to another interview I did with Richard, who's one of basically the main activist on the ground there. He took me around while John and I were there this is in Wyoming County, which is southern West Virginia. Let's play that.
You can tell he's leaning over. There's a lot of people you're going to meet today that's got blisters on them. They have no choice but to shower in the water.
And when you shower, have you noticed anything in terms of smell?
Yeah, and it feels oily. My water's just now starting to smell from it, though. Smells like rotten eggs.
And you said when the water touches you, it feels oily?
It feels oily.
It's hard to breathe it. It's hard. I don't even like turning it on to wash my clothes.
I just don't know what they're going to do.
The water we showered in down at Twin Falls, that's what, 20 minutes down the road? It smelled a little bit there.
Well,
and that's a resort.
Well, now, I had people call me because they started getting letters that they're going to mine in that area too. Another mines. And they wanted me to check into it, and I told them I was too busy for this right now. But yeah, that community probably does need to check and see if they're going to get mined under.
Well, it seems like they did get mined under. So what I was referring to there, John and I were staying in Twin Falls, which is kind of I don't know if it's a state park in Wyoming County, West Virginia. Very beautiful, a lot of hiking, natural scenery. We stayed in a cabin, very nice. But I mean, I've stayed in a lot of places with bad water, and you could tell a lot of them are the same rotten egg smell or other smell. And the water in Twin Falls, where we were staying, 20 minutes away from Pineville was the town. It smelled. Well. That was in March. I went there. We're now in September, so 6 months later. Let's show the image that Richard posted. So this is the image. We got another call about Twin Falls. Acid mine drainage is coming out at the first falls. If you could click on the picture so they could see. That orange shit is coming out into the water. That's oil, folks. That's oil. And this is, people get their drinking water from the creeks and the falls in this area. And this is 20 minutes away from the main town. So it seems that coal companies are flooding their mines all over the place. And I'm going to have Richard back on next week to explain that a little bit more. He could explain it better than me, but it seems they're intentionally flooding their own mines in order to then, when they drain it, to make it easier to get to mine something called coal bed methane, which is a growing lucrative form of natural gas. But let's play the video. This was Richard the other day showing the contamination at Twin Falls.
Falls. This is right there at the second falls. It's coming out of the ground. It's coming out everywhere. Look, it's oil. It's oil. This is right below the second falls. Right there's the falls. Guys, I'm telling you right now, that drought is a diversion. Look. Look at this. It's coming out of the ground right here. I'm trying to slow the camera down. It's coming out of the ground. It's coming out of the rock. We got a tip from some people that's up there. Look at that. That's surfactants right there. That's industrial cleaner. It's coming out of the ground. It's coming out right there. It's coming out up there. This is the second falls. Look. That's oil. They're saying it's, listen, I'm telling you guys, this has been mined under. Twin Falls has been mined under. We already know it's been mined under. Guys, listen, I'm telling y'all, that drought is a diversion. They're using all these waters to fill up the mines. Now that the mines are full, it's starting to come out everywhere. So, look at the surfactants, guys. I had that tested.
Remember, I was there in March. And I said, yeah, that's shower water in Twin Falls, which was 20 minutes from where the main contamination was. The shower water smelled funky. And he told me, yeah, I've been hearing from people over there. And it's a beautiful park. John Farina might have pictures because he probably took pictures there. And that's the shit coming out in the falls and the creeks. And I do have a little information, Colin, if you could put it up, the coal bed methane link. Coal bed methane refers to an unconventional form of natural gas found in coal deposits or seams. It is a clean energy source. Yeah, they call all this natural gas clean energy. My ass. It is a clean energy source extracted by drilling wells into coal seams and is used as compressed natural gas for various domestic and industrial purposes. Well, I'm going to have Richard on hopefully next week to explain it, but from what I could tell, they are flooding mines throughout this area. It seems all over the place. And in coal mines, if you flood the mines, you're going to have contaminated coal water coming out, which has arsenic, staggering arsenic, lead, high levels of iron. You're also going to have some bacteria problems, which is probably why it smells so bad. And there's oil that is a byproduct during mining. So people have diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, dizziness, and as that whistleblower told me, who is a healthcare worker, this stuff causes cancer. What's Joe Manchin doing about it? The governor of West Virginia, who is going to be the next senator, because Jim Justice, the governor, is running for Senate to replace Joe Manchin. He's well, he used to be a billionaire. Now he's a 100 millionaire. He's a coal baron. He owns a bunch of coal companies. He ain't doing shit. He's probably in on it. The West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, its people seem to be former coal executives because there's a revolving door. And you got people who work for coal companies who then go to work for the Environmental Protection Company. Meanwhile, these poor people, literally poor, they are poor, are breathing in, drinking, and bathing in all the byproducts of coal mining. And this isn't on the national news. Listen, I'd love to go back down there, but I need your help. It happens to be my birthday tomorrow. So at midnight. So if you want to give me a birthday gift, there we go. 38 years young. 38 years young. If you want to give me a birthday gift, sign the fuck up. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as 16 cents a day. That's $5 a month. That's how we go cover these stories, but it's incredibly expensive. We were there for 5 days. It costs money. Myself, a cameraman, driving or flights. We flew there. Expensive. Hotels, expensive. Food, expensive. Rent a car, expensive. So please, please, please support us. We have the coal executives don't fund us. The banks don't fund us. The fossil fuckers don't fund us. Big pharma don't fund us. Big real estate, Silicon Valley, the military industrial complex. We have none of their money and we don't want it. We want to be funded through the people. So sign up, StatusCoup.com/join. Please, please, please. I'd like to go down there and update you on the ground there because that's where you find out where the bodies are buried. But I need your help. Please, please. I want to see tomorrow when I wake up in the morning a whole long list of people who signed up. Let me read some and I will have updates. I'm going to have Richard on probably next week, and I'll have more updates on some other water situations that I cannot get to today. Super chat, $5. Italian American. First presidential election, still very conflicted. Was leaning Steinway, but Mehdi Hassan interview makes me ponder. Oh, I guess you're talking about ponder Jill Stein. Hey, vote for who you want. You know, it's your choice. Glad to see you're voting. Happy birthday, super chat, Tony D. My happy birthday. My birthday's in 6 days. Happy B-Day. Thank you. Happy birthday to you, Tony. Super chat, $10 from Samud Sterling. We're living in our own genocide. We have no clean water, no clean air, no clean food, no affordable housing. Ain't that the truth? I keep saying we're living in slow-moving genocide all over America. Sire Ba, $6.99. Jordan, Nebraska GOP is changing the law to get rid of the Nebraska 2 electoral college votes. Harris could win Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania and still come up short at 269. Thank you. I did not know about that. Email me if you can. I don't know. I didn't hear about that. Email me if you can. Jordan Chariton at StatusCoup.com. Jordan Chariton at StatusCoup.com. That is very important, and I didn't know about that. Mark, $5 super chat. Thank you, Mark. Teresa, 277, $10. Jordan, you uncover criminal United Corporations of America like no one else in this country. Thank you. That's very kind. Imagine if I actually had money to hire a staff, to hire other reporters, producers, get a travel budget. Oh, what we could do here. What we could do. Thank you very much. I am taking tomorrow off. Yes, it is a privilege to be able to take off your birthday, but I think I deserve it because I'm fucking tired and I want to take the day off. I want to sleep. I want to relax, maybe watch some Netflix, maybe walk my dog, maybe drink a little whiskey. We'll see where the day takes me. We'll still have content. Don't worry. Thank you so much for watching. We'll have content throughout the weekend. Reminder, I'm currently working on putting out feelers to take a reporting trip in the swing states, possibly Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Arizona. We can't do that without more funding. We can't do that without more paid members. So don't just sign up for my birthday. Sign up because you want to see more on-the-ground reporting. We're not going to go there and ask people, who are you voting for? Kamala Harris or Trump or Jill Stein? No, we want to go out there and tell people's real stories of economic struggle, economic misery, societal decay, show what's really happening while the corporate media spins that we're living in such a great economy.